In the dead of night, a noble lady was being transported. The carriage suddenly halted. Panic set in. Screams from all around scared her. While trying to figure out what happened, she'd find a piece of paper covered in blood. Her eyes quivered as a dark shadow zipped past all around her. Then, a hand with sharp claws reached into the carriage. As the lady looked up, the last thing she saw were blood-red eyes. High above the clouds, a golden light shot up in the middle of the city, causing tremors. Someone had ascended into the heaven realm. This was the first in many years. People all around speculated this person had to be extremely talented with a high cultivation level. Luck favored him. Fortune smiled on him. But who could this master be? Everyone gathered around to find out who it was. Hopes were high. The dust finally settled down, and this master cultivator appeared before everyone. But no one was happy to see Shilan again. Meeting with Ling Wang, she congratulated him on coming first in this year's contest for the most anticipated official to be cast out of Heaven Realm. Hearing that the winner would be awarded 100 merits, Leon was eager to participate in the next contest. Since he overtook the other competitors, there was no second place. And for last year, there was no winner either. The ranking was established specifically today. As they walked, she pointed him to a tower where there was supposed to be a bell. However, there was none. Of course, it was his fault. Thanks to the quake during his ascension, the bell was thrown off. It fell on a martial god, but he was able to slice the bell easily. There was a golden palace on the other side. However, it wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. The quake had toppled several places, so they had to put some temporary ones in place before the originals were fixed. Without a doubt, Lian had pissed off some officials, but in order to make up for it, he needed 8.88 million merits. He didn't even have a 10,000th of it, but when assured he'd cross that bridge when he got to it, appearing before the council of the martial gods, Wen told him that his majesty had an urgent matter to attend to in the north, and he needed help. So she asked if any of them could send 2 martial officials. However, one of them heard his majesty wasn't in the north. He suspected Wen was recruiting for someone else. Wen had told Lian about a way to get merits quickly. Recently, many northern worshippers were praying for help. They asked heavenly officials to get rid of evil ghosts, but his majesty couldn't spare time for the north, and General Mingguan was also occupied. If Lian filled in, the merits from the offerings of the worshippers would be all his. Upon seeing Crown Prince Lian, the martial gods wondered why he was back again. This was like the 3rd time, and some of them were certain he'd be banished within 30 minutes. It was obvious Wen was recruiting help for none other than Lian. They all made fun of him. As Lian appeared before them, the martial god who nearly got hit by the bell complained. The crown prince apologized and requested his name. He had forgotten so quickly who Mu Qing, aka General Schwanji, was. Just then, another martial god stormed in, demanding to know who had turned down in his palace. All hands pointed to Lian. As Feng Xin, titled General Nanyang, saw him, he couldn't believe his eyes. Lian apologized for all the losses he caused them, promising to pay them back in due time. After that, they all left. Wen would apologize to Lian for the trouble. If it weren't for Jen, they could have recruited some people. Either way, Lian was used to doing things on his own. He couldn't use any spiritual weapons as well, since his powers were gone after 2 punishments. Wen then handed him a scroll, telling him to be careful and to contact her if he needed any help. The task was critical. He'd thank her for her help, but she told him to save his thanks for when the Heavenly Emperor returned. As Lian left, Wen wished everything to go well for him. Arriving at Mount Yu Jun, Lian went into shop, ordering a pot of tea. He'd asked the owner if anything weird had happened recently, but the man had no comments. Just then, a beautiful, glowing butterfly caught his attention. As he followed it to the window, he heard Wen's voice in his head. She had good news. There were deputy gods from the middle court coming to his aid. Once he turned around, he saw the 2 guys who looked like they were ready to behead him. Wen left him to deal with them. The 2 guys were Nan Feng and Fu Yao. They were working for Generals Zhen and Yang. However, the generals didn't know about them being here. By the looks of it, Feng and Yao didn't like each other so much. Lian proceeded to tell them about the legend of Mount Yu Jun. There was a ghost bridegroom living in the mountain, an ugly, sneaky one who liked to kidnap brides. Over the last 100 years, 17 brides had gone missing, and hundreds in the bridal processions were killed. Heaven Realm shouldn't have found out about this, but the 17th bride's father was a powerful official. Upon hearing the legend, he picked up 40-gallon escorts to protect his beloved daughter on the way to the grooms, but his daughter still went missing. The official loved his daughter dearly. Enraged, he, along with his friends in power, did all they could to pray and make offerings. Also, they put a hefty bounty on the culprit. All of this stirred up trouble in the north, gaining Heaven Realm's attention. So, Their goal for the task was to capture the ghost bridegroom. The missing brides ranged from rich to poor, pretty to plain, and wives to concubines. Basically, they all had nothing in common, and this ghost bridegroom hadn't been seen by anyone before. As Lian decided they should go find accommodation, they met a crowd outside. At this critical time, a family was sending off a bride. Sensing something was off, Lian decided they should check it out. Suddenly, Xiao Ying stopped the carriage, warning the lady inside that she was being used as bait to lure the ghost bridegroom. To everyone's surprise, a wooden doll's head dropped out. It was a decoy all along. Xiao Pengtao yelled at her for not agreeing to dress up as a bride. If she had agreed, he wouldn't have to use a decoy. Apparently, Pengtao and his gang were always involved in illicit affairs. Now, they were after the bounty to catch the ghost bridegroom. Ying tried to warn Pengtao how dangerous this was, but he didn't care. After all, he could make his money and also eliminate the problem for the neighborhood. If she wouldn't dress up as a bride, then why was she stopping them? Pengtao accused the ghost bridegroom of being her lover. They had seen her going up the mountain a few times. He started bullying her. Fed up with Pengtao's awful behavior, Lian rushed to the scene and blew him away. As the goons tried to attack, Feng scared them away with his display of power. Being too scared to fight, Pingtou ran away like a wimp. Feng might have used too much power, causing the shop to collapse in a single touch. Seeing Ying's torn dress, Lian took off his coat to help her, but she'd slap him, calling him a pervert before running away. So much for trying to help. After settling the destroyed shop's bill, Lian asked the man for the nearest Mingguang temple. He found it strange that there was none here, but the man mentioned there was a Nanyang temple. Arriving at the temple, Lian found it strange that General Mingguang had no temple here, despite being in charge of the north. General Nanyang was in charge of the east, but had many believers up north. A long time ago, Nanyang was called General Duke. However, a careless king misspelled Duke, replacing the U with I. Hence, all temples changed their names to match Dick Yang Temple. Word traveled fast about that. Up until now, Nanyang's temple's visitors were still women. A lot of them would blush as they made their wishes. Furious at how Yao made fun of his general, Feng grew angry. He reminded Yao how his general served tea to his highness, swept his floor, and made his bed. As they kept going back and forth, a fight broke out. They started tossing food at each other, while Lian had no idea what to do. He eventually stopped them and didn't want to be involved in their fights. He then asked someone to lend him powers so he could contact Wen. His wasn't enough. With Feng's assistance, he was able to reach her, and she was glad to hear the deputy gods had unique styles and potential. When he mentioned there wasn't a Mingguang temple, she found it strange as well. As for the ghost bridegroom, she had information about its ranking. Out of the rankings of fierce, severe, wrath, and devastation, the ghost bridegroom was a wrath, the second highest rank. If nothing was done, severe damage and high casualties would be inflicted. Afterward, Lian informed the deputy gods about the ghost bridegroom's rank. Yao suggested they use brides as bait to catch the culprit, since he was interested in them. However, decoys wouldn't work. They'd need a real human being. Despite how risky it would be, Yao and Feng agreed to dress up Lian as bait. Shortly after, they'd be shocked to see how good he actually looked in makeup. Then, Ying came over, apologizing for what happened yesterday. As a token of her gratitude, she brought some food. Being good at dressing people up, she offered to dress up Lian properly as a bride. The next evening, they set out with some sedan carriers they hired. Spying on them, Pengtou and his goons assumed they were here for the bounty, but they wouldn't be outdone so easily. As night came, Lian began hearing the giggles of ladies and sweet singing. However, no one else could hear it. The song was like a warning, telling the bride not to smile or cry. Worst case scenario, if Lian cried or smiled, he'd still be kidnapped. And so, he informed Feng and Yao that he'd been smiling this whole time. Suddenly, wild wolves appeared, attacking them. Lian noticed it was a magical formation, so they needed to find its focal point. Feng and Yao could handle the wolves, but that wouldn't be the only thing they had to worry about. Slowly, zombies, known as base slaves, emerged from the ground. Their numbers were too much to handle. Seeing that there were more than 100, Lian had no choice but to use his powers. He told Feng and Yao to leave because they couldn't kill all the zombies. Lian decided to stay behind and meet the ghost bridegroom. After they left, a chilling breeze blew into Lian's carrier. Then, the beautiful butterfly from earlier flew past him. At that moment, a dark-haired man appeared before him. There was an ancient kingdom called Xianlei in the central plain. Its crown prince was called Xilan. The prince cherished his people and was well cultivated. His beauty was widely known by them. His figure etched into people's memories when he saved a falling child on Shenwu Street. His dazzling wit rid the people of a ghost on Yinian Bridge. It was a fierce battle. As blades clashed, the sparks lit up the darkness. But in the end, Lian won. The Heavenly Emperor saw great potential in the Crown Prince. Thus, he ascended into heaven at a very young age. Yet, not long after that, calamity hit the Shenlei Kingdom. The Crown Prince went to the mortal realm to save his kingdom, but to no avail. It ended in desertion. As Lian was taken away by the dark-haired man, he recalled telling the boy he saved back then that if he couldn't find a reason to live, then the boy could take him as his reason. Walking through the bloody rain together, Lian noticed the dark-haired man's footsteps were light, meaning he was a young man. Yet, his pace was steady, as if he had seen it all. Once they stopped, the man was about to take off Lian's veil when the Crown Prince attacked. But suddenly, the man transformed into countless butterflies. If the man was really the ghost bridegroom, then it didn't make sense for the wolves to be terrified of him. The magical formation, which should have been set up by the ghost bridegroom, was also stomped out by him. So, if he wasn't the ghost, then why come for the bride? Lian then noticed a butterfly leading him to the Mingguang temple ahead. He found it strange, considering the shop owner from earlier told him there were none here. Upon getting there, he'd be shocked to find the 17 missing brides. Suddenly, they began singing the song, signaling the arrival of a new bride. Sensing an ominous presence, Lian immediately joined the line of brides to blend in. A dark shadow entered the temple, lifting the veil of the brides until Lian was revealed. Without hesitation, he started to fight back, but the shadow was quick to escape. When he got outside, he bumped into Pengto and his group. Pengto would mistake him for one of the kidnapped brides until he got closer. This was the perfect chance for him to get even, but with Yao and Feng showing up, he wouldn't dream of it. Lian then asked if he ran into anything odd on the way here. Pengto explained that he and his gang were tracking the ghost bridegroom. Meanwhile, Feng and Yao didn't notice anything strange on their way here. Lian apologized to Pengto and his gang, letting him know the ghost bridegroom might be among them. Of course, Pengto wouldn't stand for that. He then asked him to verify their identities. Feng took a torch, inspecting them one by one, but found no one strange. Still, they suspected the ghost could have transformed into someone else. Suddenly, a noise came from the bushes. Pengto grabbed the torch and went to investigate. However, it turned out to be Ying who was there. She worried about them, which was why she followed. But according to Pengto's goons, she wasn't with them when they came. Because of that, she was suspected of being the ghost bridegroom. But Ying swore it was really her, even mentioning how she helped Lian with his outfit and makeup. They all backed away from him, thinking he was some kind of cross-dressing gay guy. Even Feng and Yao wouldn't help. Just then, one of the guys who snuck into the temple came out, informing the others of the brides inside. Pengto immediately accused Lian of trying to take the bounty all for himself. So, he and his guys rushed in, despite being warned. Getting inside, they'd be shocked to find out the brides were already dead. Lian then came in, warning them to leave because the temple was permeated with toxic gases from the corpses. Regardless, Pengto refused to listen. He insisted the families would still pay for the bodies. As he took off the veils, Lian told him not to do it because they helped to block off the death chi and yan chi. One of the brides was particularly beautiful, catching their attention. As they began caressing her face, Ying tried to stop them, but Pengto slapped her away. Lian would shield her, and at that moment, a stone hit Pengto's head. Trying to find out who it was, he saw a dark figure outside. Without delay, he and his guys started chasing the person. Lian would chase after them. On the way, he noticed a particular smell. He'd warned them not to go into the forest, but of course, they didn't care what he said and ventured in. Moments later, they ran out, screaming for their lives after being covered in blood. But the blood wasn't theirs. Grabbing a torch, Lian threw it into the darkness. There, they saw corpses hanging from the trees and blood dripping down. Feng and Yao then showed up, stating that the ghost bridegroom had something to do with the green ghost. The green ghost was one with a cultivation level near the devastation rank. It was known to love hanging corpses upside down in the woods. Lian then told them about the man he met while he was on the sedan chair. Given how the man crushed the magical formation, they suspected he might be the green ghost. When Lian mentioned seeing the silver butterflies, Yao panicked, saying they needed to get away immediately. He didn't have time to explain, but he said the situation was beyond Lian, and they needed to report to the Heaven Realm. However, Lian told him to go get help, while he stayed behind to protect the others. Then, one of the bandits dragged out a boy, covered in bandages, claiming he was the ghost bridegroom. Ying tried to tell Pengto that the boy had nothing to do with this. He wasn't the ghost. But Pengto was insistent on taking off the bandages. As Lian stopped him, Ying asked for his help. However, Pengto kept accusing them of being accomplices of the ghost. Fed up with his useless talk, Lian knocked him out. This would anger the rest of the crew. Before they could do anything, the wind began blowing, spreading the blood on the trees all around. Seeing it was too dangerous here, Lian advised everyone to leave quickly. Once they got away, Ying explained that Long Ying used to live in Mount Yu Jun. He would go out to steal food when he was starving. One day, Ying caught him stealing from her. Seeing his awful injuries, she bandaged his wounds. Lang Ying was aesthetically and verbally challenged, so out of fear, the villagers beat him up often. Man, he got it rough. She had to take him to the mountain and bring food for him every few days. Out of worry, she followed Pangto's group, only to check on the boy. Lian then asked her if there were other Mingguang temples. Apparently, there used to be quite a few of them, but somehow, all of them caught fire. Lian would then borrow some spiritual fire from Feng before heading back to the temple. Though the others tried to keep Feng behind to protect them, he beat them up before proceeding with Lian. Feng asked why they were going back, and Lian told them it was to subdue the 18 dead brides. According to him, the ghost bridegroom was the 18th one. Since the villagers confirmed there was no stranger among them, Lian figured the ghost bridegroom had to be hiding here. Just like he had hidden among the brides, the ghost could be doing the same to deceive them. After hearing about how the Mingguang temples caught fire, Lian concluded it was more arson than an accident. Such an act could only be out of hatred. But why was there one more Mingguang temple here, blocked by a magical formation? With how the brides passing by were forbidden to smile, it seemed the ghost was jealous of their happiness as well. Connecting all the dots, the only possible conclusion was that the ghost bridegroom was actually a bitter and vindictive bride. Lian also figured the brides died while bearing a grudge. With their veils removed, their grudge was triggered by the yang qi of the men. As the brides began attacking the village, they ran for their lives. Running into the temple, Pangto told his men to shut the gates, even though some had been left behind. By the time Lian and Feng rushed out to the courtyard, there was nothing but chaos before them. Lian would quickly use his powers, conjuring a whirlwind to distract the brides. However, it wouldn't last for long. As the other men walked through the gate, the brides turned their attention to them. While Feng rushed off to help him, Lian handled the two brides who attacked him. Covering their faces with veils, they could no longer move. On the other hand, Pangto had his lights knocked out, leaving his men scurrying away. Using his powers, Lian would create a barrier to protect the villagers. Then, he managed to subdue more brides, covering their heads with veils, but there was still more trouble from the rest. So, he'd contact Wen, asking if Ming Guang had any romantic relationships, particularly if he dated any jealous women. She found out that when Ming Guang was a human general, he became entangled with a strong-willed woman from an opposing army. Her name was Schwanji. When she was defeated in combat, she tried to take her own life, but Ming Guang stopped her. Since the war had ended by that point, he set her free. Considering her competitive nature, she kept challenging him, and eventually, they fell in love. Although she wanted a more serious relationship, Ming Guang was a known philanderer. Before Lian could get an answer about Schwanji's disability, he was suddenly attacked by the dark smoke, but he dodged in time. Hearing footsteps, he noticed the sound was weird. It sounded like the footsteps of someone with a leg injury. Schwanji appeared before him. She wondered if her beloved Ming Guan, also known as Pei, had sent him to get rid of her, even after betraying her country and leaving everything behind for him. This was where it had left her. Hearing of this betrayal, Lian wondered if the general took advantage of Schwanji's love to acquire intelligence. Then, Ming Guang probably injured her leg and abandoned her. Lian tried to reason with her, but she wouldn't listen. No one mattered, except her beloved Pei. At the same time, Pangto was trying to escape with Lang. Of course, he was too foolish to listen to anyone's warning. Letting his guard down, Schwanji used that chance to take him out. Even after burning down his temples and reducing his followers, Ming Guang wasn't bothered enough to come stop her. She cursed him. She'd been waiting for years. Everything she had done was for him. Yet, he wouldn't even acknowledge her. As Lian tried to calm her fury, she'd hold him down. Ying would try to save him, but Schwanji hit her away. With that distraction, Lian was able to tie up Schwanji before rushing to Ying's side. As she bled out in her final moments, she told Lang not to steal food anymore. After Lian assured Lang could come to him for food, Ying then passed away. Trouble was still far from over though. Completely losing herself, Schwanji broke free, unleashing her true powers. When a wrath released its strength like this, humans were said to crumple like paper. As Lian was about to clash with her, the heavens opened up, shining a golden light down on them. Schwanji was captured once more, and Pei Shu appeared before them. Schwanji was happy to see her beloved, until she realized it wasn't actually him. This Pei was a descendant of the one she knew, and he was usually referred to as Pei Jr. The real General Pei was too busy. She got pissed, claiming General Pei used to cross half a country just to be with her, so hearing this was preposterous. Pei then asked her to be taken away. He planned to seal her under a mountain, but Lian felt it wouldn't hold, considering her grudge. After all, she claimed the older General Pei had injured her leg, or so he thought. Apparently, the leg injury was of her own doing. It began when Schwanji was captured by General Pei. Inside his tent, she tried to take her own life, but he quickly stopped her. Suddenly, he'd kiss her, leaving her flustered. He complimented her beauty and her smile. Each day they lived could be their last, so he asked if it wasn't better to live in the moment. From that moment, they loved each other, abandoning all thoughts of the future. They shared their love in every second they could spare. However, Schwanji began to long for a committed relationship, but General Pei found such willfulness stifling. In the end, the two were incompatible. One day, he told her to go back and support her people. She couldn't believe her ears. Fear gripped her. If there was any way she had wronged him, she wanted to make things right. She then gave him a map, detailing her army's next operation. Once he was victorious, she'd go home, hoping he'd join her. After General Pei's victory, he abandoned her, refusing to even look at her. Desperate to gain his attention, Schwanji stabbed her leg, so Pei would feel obligated to take care of her. And so, he did. But kindness aside, he wouldn't marry her. Upon seeing her dream shattered, Schwanji took her own life. Wanting to hurt Pei's heart, she hurt herself, but his feelings would not be swayed. Pei Shu wasn't sure who to blame, but if Schwanji had moved on, they'd all be better off. Schwanji could only scream curses at Pei before being taken away. Lian wasn't one to judge the whole scenario, but he felt sorry for the victims who were dragged into this. Afterwards, Lian and Feng met up with Yao, who was helping clear up the corpses on the trees. Just then, Lian realized he was still wearing the wedding dress, even in front of Pei Shu. According to Feng, Pei had ascended 100 years ago, but he was given his position in his 20s. Apparently, Pei had been involved in a dreadful massacre before. Hence, Feng and Yao distrusted him, along with other officials, but they still believed their generals were trustworthy ones. The bandits agreed not to sell the corpses, nor engage in any other illicit businesses. Also, they promised to pray and offer incense for the brides who met their end here. After that, Lian went to bury Ying along with Yang. He told the boy to be brave for her sake. Seeing his head bleeding, Lian asked him to take off the bandage so he could help. Once Lang's bandage came off, it brought back dreadful memories to Lian. Lang had the multi-face disease, a disease that should have died out long ago with the fall of Xianlei. As Lian tried reaching for Lang, the boy ran away. He'd be unable to chase after due to a sharp pain in his head, making him dizzy for a moment. Lian was certain it was the multi-face disease. However, he suspected Lang was already on the mend. The scars were just the aftermath. Fang found it absurd, considering how young the boy was, but Lian felt he might have lived for centuries. For now, he decided to go back and inform Wen of these strange findings. After informing Wen about Lang, Lian still had one more concern on his mind. Wen told him to use the telepathic matrix, because the officials would like to hear as well. When they arrived, Nan Yang was at his wit's end, because Schwanji refused to reveal where the Green Immor, Qi Rong, was. She only begged for Pei Ming. He wanted her gone, but no one had the space. Pei Jr. would refuse to take her, claiming only Nan Yang could handle her. Lian then asked if Qi Rong had something to do with the hanging corpses on Mount Yu Jun. According to Xuanzhen, it was assumed the corpses were an offering made to Qi Rong. It was expected after all. Qi Rong's taste was known for being crude and morbid. Even his fellow ghosts despised his antics. Nevertheless, everyone clamored for Ming Guang to come handle Xuanji and leave everyone out of his mess. However, Pei Jr. claimed it wouldn't work. Apparently, Xuanji worked for the Green Immor. Despite passing away several hundred years ago, she still held an age-old grudge. It was only recently she became affiliated with the Green Immor, making her a nuisance. Wen silenced everyone, reminding them it was thanks to Lian that they had a resolution. As the one in charge of the case, Lian mentioned the childlike singing he had heard while in the sedan chair. One of the officials said it was his delusion, though he found it suspicious. Either way, Wen decided she'd personally look into it. Also, Lian asked if anyone had come across a young man who could control silver butterflies. Hearing that his name was Hua Cheng, Lian thought it was a nice name. However, Everyone else seemed to be terrified hearing it. Everyone except Lian knew Hua Cheng as one of the 4 devils. They were a troublesome force consisting of 4 demon lords. The Green Immor was one of them, but the weakest was yet to attain the rank of devastation. Next was the Black Immor, who was known to keep a low profile. Even Heaven didn't have that much information on him, but they knew he was a water demon. The most powerful one was the White Calamity, Bai Wushang. Hearing that name brought back terrible memories to Lian, but Wan assured him that Bai Wushang had long since passed. As for the butterflies Lian saw, they were known as Death Spirit butterflies. Their master had been a headache to the Heaven realm for ages. His name was Hua Cheng, also known as the Crimson Rain Sought Flower. Not only did he appear in different forms, but it was said he beat 33 gods and burned down their temples. He sought to challenge 35 heavenly officials, offering them his ashes if he lost. But if he won, they'd have to relinquish their positions in heaven. Hence, 33 foolish gods accepted and were defeated. When they refused to uphold their end of the deal, Hua Cheng burned down their temples as retribution. The devastation led to the downfall of those 33 gods. Even worse, these foolish gods projected their duels into the realms of their believers, which made their followers reveal Hua Cheng instead. The very butterflies that haunted the dreams of martial gods, Lian found them quite elegant. Seeing that 2 gods didn't accept Hua Cheng's challenge, he asked who these gods were, and Schwanji and Nan Yang knew so much. This guy had to be the dullest in the room. When Lian mentioned how Hua Cheng led him safely, the gods found it odd. That wasn't like him. So, they all agreed to be more cautious in case Cheng was planning something. After that, they concluded the meeting. Before Zhan and Yang left, Lian thanked them for the junior officials. Following that, Lian met with Wen concerning the merits he still owed, but thanks to the offering from the Mount Yu Jun worshippers, his debt had been cleared. It was quite unbelievable, but it was done. Noticing the workers had looked stressed and scared, Lian asked if she had any other information. There was a situation she had told the Emperor about, for which an investigation was going on. While Lian was in the mortal realm, the Emperor had become a thorn in her side. Wen then asked what his plans were for the future. Lian had ascended 3 times, but had no temples or worshippers, so he wanted to be more independent. With that freedom, he could go to the mortal realm himself and build his own temple. By the time Wen figured out what he was trying to pull, Lian was gone. The next moment, he was in the mortal realm, cleaning up a deserted house to use as a temple. Some men came, asking who the temple was devoted to. When he told them it was the Shanlei Kingdom heir, they had no idea who that was. It didn't help that this crown prince god couldn't bless them with wealth, or even give them a promotion. No one would want to worship such a worthless deity. The men suggested he worship Wen or Nan Yang. Then, they wished him luck as they left. Lian wasn't in a rush. He was certain he'd have worshippers and offerings eventually. In the meantime, he needed to make sure his temple wouldn't die before him. Shortly after, he visited town, asking the locals for different items and picking up scrolls as well. On his way back, he hitched a ride on a carriage. The scrolls he read were about godly tales and ghost stories. Selling these to invest in his future was more fun for him. When the carriage tipped, a scroll rolled out, and to his surprise, it mentioned him. Though he was called a god of martial arts, plagues, and scrap collecting, but at least he was a god. He saw all gods as equal beings. Unexpectedly, a man appeared beside him, questioning whether gods would really exist if all things were equal. Mortals preached equality, but wanted power to rely on too. Acknowledging his point, Lian mentioned that Wu Du, the water god, also oversaw wealth. Since merchants often traveled by ship, they'd pray to him for safe passage. Eventually, it became his province as well. However, the water god was also a tyrant. He'd capsize ships if they didn't make offerings, and so he became known as the water tyrant. Lian noticed the young man was quite knowledgeable. He'd pique his interest, asking if he knew anything about gods. Lian then asked about Hua Cheng. Just before he left Heaven Realm, Wen warned him he might meet Hua Cheng again. Hua Cheng came from Mount Furnace, where ghosts faced off to select their next kings. Hence, the place had created treacherous beings who were ruthless, fickle, and sly, so she advised him to avoid the Crimson Rain-sought flower at all costs. However, Lian couldn't help but stare at the dark-haired man in front of him. He was Hua Cheng. Lian had no idea he was actually speaking to Hua Cheng. However, Cheng gladly indulged him, asking what he wanted to know. Lian then asked where the name Crimson Rain-sought flower came from. One day, Chang destroyed the base of a ghost. On his way out, a wilted flower drenched with the bloody rain caught his eye, so he held his umbrella for it. Did Chang get into fights a lot? It depended on his mood for the day. Before becoming a ghost, he wouldn't say he was nice. And when Lian asked what he looked like, Chang leaned in, asking what he thought a devil would look like. Since he was a ghost king, Lian believed he'd have multiple forms and looks. On the other hand, Chang said his real look would be a youngster like him. However, one of his eyes was blind. Chang had gouged his right eye when he went mad. People suspected it was his weakness, and that led Lian to ask if he had any weak points. There was one, his bone ashes. Whoever got the ghost's ashes would get his support, and whoever destroyed it would destroy the ghost. Of course, no one had access to that. However, Chang would be willing to offer his ashes under one condition. There was a custom in the ghost realm where a ghost would entrust his ashes to whom he fully trusted. Lian saw it as quite a risky custom, but Chang didn't care if his ashes ended up destroyed or scattered. Shortly after, Lian properly introduced himself and shared a snack with Chang, and Chang introduced himself as San Lang. Then, Lian spoke of the chestnut temple he built, which was dedicated to the Prince of Shanli. Suddenly, the car tipped, and Chang nearly fell off, but Lian caught him just in time. The driver's ox didn't want to move any further and instead slowly backed away. Then, they caught sight of the lanterns of some hooded figures. The driver immediately panicked, claiming they were ghosts. Using his sash, Lian protected them by making them invisible. Apparently, there was a ghost festival going on. Lian would then make the driver pass out to keep his mouth shut. The ghosts bumped into the cart, but they were unable to tell what was in front of them. After they passed, the driver continued the journey. Chang claimed he was scared. However, Lian assured he was here to protect him. He then caught Chang staring at the bandage around his neck. Lian told him it was nothing to be concerned about. Just then, their cloak gave way, and the ghosts caught sight of them. Without delay, Lian took charge of the cart and sped off. When they came to a fork in the road, he began a ritual to choose the right path. However, his luck wasn't so great, so Chang would do the honors, and they followed his path. Yet, the ghost still caught them. Lian apologized, letting them know he didn't want the situation to be escalated. Knowing Lian was a Taoist, they weren't about to let him go. As one of them rushed to attack, Chang's gaze left him frozen on the spot. Scared for their lives, the ghosts took to their heels and ran away. Continuing their journey, Lian asked Chang if he'd ever gone to a fortune teller. Hearing that he didn't, he offered to read his palm. As Chang showed it, Lian recalled that ghosts weren't perfect at mimicking the fine details of humans. There were no obvious signs of mana use. Plus, Chang's palm lines were clear. While telling him that his fate was good, Lian figured that if Chang really was a ghost, he would be wrathful. After all, his disguise was immaculate. But then again, why was a ghost king here? Chang wanted to know his fate concerning love. Lian told him girls would obviously throw themselves at him, thanks to his dashing good looks. Soon after, he invited Chang to stay at his temple. Since he had nowhere else to stay, Chang accepted, seeming particularly interested in him. Arriving at the temple, Lian told him they'd be sharing the bed tonight. Gay. And Chang reluctantly accepted. He then pointed out that Lian was missing one crucial thing, the portrait of the god. He offered to paint it, claiming he knew what the crown prince already looked like. Curious, Lian wanted to know what Chang's opinions of the prince were. For starters, Chang felt Emperor Junwu hated the crown prince, given he had banished him twice. But Lian told him the emperor was just doing his job. Chang's eyes would dart towards Lian's bandage again, before they went to bed. The next morning, Lian woke up and rushed to look at the portrait Chang had painted. Heading outside, he complimented the portrait, telling Chang it was lovely. Caressing his hair, Lian told him it was messy and offered to comb it. No matter how good a ghost's disguise was, there were always signs of weakness in the hair. Surprisingly, Lian found nothing unusual. In order not to be caught, he quickly finished with it and excused himself. He went ahead to place talismans that would help ward off ghosts and other evil beings. Chang would suddenly leave, making Lian wonder if the talisman worked on him. Moments later, Chang returned with a log of wood. With his craftsmanship, he constructed a door for the temple. He would help Lian do some remodeling as thanks for letting him stay the night. He was quite skillful, more than Lian had expected. It was even more shocking to hear that no one taught Chang how to draw. He simply practiced on his own. The driver of the cart from earlier, along with some other villagers, came to the temple. As Lian stepped out, they began praying for wealth, fertility, and marriage. Sadly, he would have to disappoint them, letting them know their requests wouldn't work. After that, they went inside, bringing offerings and prayers. Lian thought it would take a month before this would happen, but it seemed Chang's good luck rubbed off on him. For that, he was grateful. Seeing Lian appreciated him, Chang whispered, "If that's the case, take it all." More villagers then came in, carrying an elderly man who was very ill, and they begged Lian to save him. Opening his eyes, the old man was startled seeing Lian reach for him. He begged not be sent to the Crescent Pass. He had only just managed to escape. Lian had heard the place was some kind of oasis, and it had a lovely view of the moon. The old man didn't see it that way. If it were 200 years ago, he'd agree about the lovely view. But now, he felt the place should be called the Death Pass. At least, half the people who journeyed there never returned. The old man was part of a caravan passing through that met a gruesome fate. Knowing it would be unwise to travel without Taoist priests, his temple was hired to escort and protect the travelers. Suddenly, a violent sandstorm swept them away. When the old man got out of the sand, the 60 people he was with were nowhere to be found. According to the rumors, this all started 150 years ago. Because of an evil Taoist, Chang interrupted him, asking if he really escaped from there. Then, Lian offered the man a bowl of water, which he was surprisingly hesitant to take. When he pretended to drink it, Lian saw through his tricks. Unable to hide his intentions any longer, he pulled out a blade and attacked, but he'd be easily disarmed. Before he could escape, Lian struck his leg, causing him to shrivel to his real form. Chang confirmed that the old man was just a puppet, but by the looks of it, Lian was dealing with someone quite crafty, but he didn't seem so alarmed. Entering the telepathic matrix, he was shocked to see the heavenly officials celebrating. When explained that the Windmaster had returned and they were giving handouts, he'd interrupt them, asking if anyone had heard of the Crescent Pass. Suddenly, the room fell silent. They ignored him and went on with their handouts. Wen, on the other hand, asked why he was so curious. After hearing about the attack, she advised him to leave it alone. She didn't want to discuss, saying it was unwise to dig up the affairs of Heaven Realm. Returning to his temple, Lian told Chang he'd be heading to the pass. Considering he used to collect scraps over there, part of him was curious. Apparently, Chang knew a bit about this evil Taoist. 200 years ago, the Crescent Kingdom still existed. The Crescentians were known for having very powerful and aggressive warriors. The inhabitants of the Central Plain were often harassed by them, and their imperial preceptor was that Taoist. A knock came on the door. Lian was shocked to see Feng and Yao. When he was discussing with Wen, they overheard him. Seeing how they were dressed, he figured they volunteered to come along. When they saw Chang, they weren't so welcoming of him. Lian explained to him that Feng and Yao were his assistants. Hearing that, Chang tossed a broom to Yao, causing his fury to erupt. Feng was quite wary of Chang, even though Lian said he was alright. Lian urged him to calm down and trust him. He would then apologize to Chang for their hostile behavior. It seemed Chang looked like someone they knew. Likewise, he felt he had seen them before. Afterwards, Feng prepared the passageway, and they all got ready to leave. Opening, they teleported to a different city. From there, their journey began. By the time they reached the desert, Cheng was tired, asking for another teleportation. But Lian let him know it would take too much mana. He offered Chang his hat, but the Ghost King refused, insisting he was alright. As they continued walking, Cheng happily spoke of what he knew about the evil Taoist. To begin, there were actually two Taoists. The other was Feng Xin of the Central Plain. If traveling to the west, the Crescent Kingdom had to be passed. The Central Plain fought to claim that territory 200 years ago. Back then, the evil Crescent Taoist was but an orphan, wandering around with no place to go. Lacking a mentor in life, they learned the art of black sorcery. Intimidated by the young Taoist powers, he was made the Crescentians' imperial preceptor. Knowing the two countries were locked in a power struggle, the adolescent created an altar to protect their soldiers. With their morale boosted, the soldiers dedicated themselves to protecting the gates. Among the rocks, arrows, and swords were countless lives fighting to the death. However, at the climax of battle, the imperial preceptor opened the gate. Tens of thousands of enemies flooded their city. It soon became a blood altar. Taking advantage of the massacre, the imperial preceptor used this to enhance their black sorcery. This event led them to becoming a wrath. The Crescent Kingdom fell, and now only the pass remained. When the city fell, evil spirits moved. Its oasis and houses were buried. As for the rumors of missing people recently, Chang heard it was because the evil Taoist was feeding travelers to the spirits of dead soldiers, thus sustaining their presence in this realm. Yao commented on how knowledgeable he was, and Chang teased, saying it wasn't the same for him. Furious, Yao attacked, trying to get him to reveal himself, but Chang remained calm all through. Feng then pointed to a house in the distance, so Cheng went to check it out. While he was gone, Yao told Lian there was something off about Chang. Lian agreed, but being off didn't mean harmful, so he asked the two of them to trust him. If Chang wasn't human, The only other reasonable option would be that he was a ghost king, but Lian doubted a ghost king would be collecting scraps with him. Chang would then call them over, informing him that the place was cool and nice. Getting into the building, it was quite something, but it was enough for them to take a rest. Chang wanted to share Lian's satchel of water. Nevertheless, Yao stopped him and asked him to have his true shape serum instead. They kept going back and forth after Chang declined. But once Lian confirmed it wasn't poisoned, Chang gulped it without a flinch. Feng then brought out his ghost-revealing sword. Chang grabbed it and slowly unsheathed it a bit. Suddenly, he put it back, claiming it was broken. When Feng checked, the sword was in pieces. In the end, they were still yet to reveal Chang's true colors. As the sandstorm swept by, Lian looked out the window and noticed two people running through it. He'd be shocked to see that the person under the blue hoodie was a woman. They all quickly set out to follow her. Due to the sandstorm, they lost track of her. Plus, it was getting windier. When Lian turned around, Feng and Yao were nowhere to be found. That's when Chang appeared out of the sandstorm. Lian rushed to him, and as he dressed his coat, Chang avoided his gaze. Lian's hat was nearly blown away, but Chang caught it. In that moment, their eyes met. Once Chang and Yao caught up, Lian suggested they retreat, suspecting there was sorcery at play here. Of course, Feng and Yao blamed Chang. They were still very suspicious of him, and Yao didn't think the wind was that strong to make them go back. That's when Lian was carried away by a tornado. Using his sash, he threw it to hold onto something solid, but he didn't mean to grab onto Chang. The sash let go, and Lian was blown away. Lian managed to grab back onto Chang, pulling him in. Using his sash, he'd bind them closely together. He would then try using it to grab onto something else, but the sash pulled in Feng and Yao. After tying everyone together, Lian's sash finally managed to grab onto a pillar. Using that, he pulled out of the tornado. Seeing that they were about to crash into a wall, Lian let go, causing them to fall down. Without a moment's delay, they rushed into the cave. Inside the cave, Lian told the others that he believed the woman in white was the imperial preceptor. Considering how they ran, he suspected they were trained. Yao suspected the other in black was Feng Xin. However, Lian doubted it, especially since they were born a century apart. Thanks to his scrap collecting in the past, he had a lot of knowledge about this. With no other choice, Lian and the others decided to wait out the storm. He then told Feng and Yao that they weren't very helpful, but it wasn't their fault. There were no temples in the far northwest. Because of that, they were both at a disadvantage. Their mana was restricted since they had roamed too far from the south, where their generals were. Feng then noticed there were signs of digging around this hard rock. He found it quite strange. Yao claimed he was always making a fuss over nothing like his master. Since this area got hit with so many sandstorms at night, Lian explained that the Banyoa people usually dug. It was all to protect their livestock. Sometimes, they'd even use dynamite. Suddenly, he'd be startled as he bumped into someone who screamed. Feng quickly threw a light into the darkness, revealing all the people who were here. They were a group of traveling merchants, seeking shelter for the night. Doubting them, Feng questioned why they were being all sneaky. Then, a little kid snapped back at him, arguing they were the ones being all tricky with their fireballs. He suspected they were ghosts, and this kid had a sharp tongue that definitely hit Feng's nerves. Zhang told the boy to show some respect, referring to him as Tian Sheng. Lian calmed the situation, introducing himself as a Taoist priestess and his others as his followers. They meant no harm and were only seeking shelter, just like the merchants. Still suspecting foul play, Cheng questioned why the merchants took this route when half the people usually went missing. Zhang said those were all rumors. According to him, people could safely pass through here, but a reliable guide was needed. And the guide they had was Zhao. Lian decided to believe them and apologized for the misunderstanding. While waiting out the storm, Chang called Lian's attention to the writings on the stone he was sitting on. Lian was able to read a bit of it, though he was rusty. Seems trash wasn't the only thing he picked up. Chang mentioned that it was a headstone of a general, and Lian confirmed it. As they read the stone, Chang approached them, asking if the general was from Banyoa. Chang quickly shot him a deadly glare that scared him. Apparently, the general was from the Central Plain. Strange for him to have a gravestone here, since both sides were constantly at war. Even though he was addressed as general from the inscription, he was really a lieutenant. In his time, a great war raged on, and he fought on the front line alongside his men. Starting off strong, he had 100 soldiers, but that soon became 70, and before long, 50. As the numbers dropped, so did his rank. The reason he was demoted was that he was a hindrance on the battlefield. He barred the Banyoa soldiers from murdering the civilians from the Central Plains and vice versa. Every time he did so, he was demoted. Eventually, he had nothing left to lose. All was fair in war. But according to Yao, his act of trying to save lives would be seen as a betrayal of his own men, and he claimed the general was killed by his own men. Lian confirmed that the general did die, however, not by his own men. According to the stone inscriptions, the general slipped on his own shoelaces mid-battle, and the enemy stabbed him to death. That has to be the lamest way to go out in war. Although his military reputation had fallen, the civilians were grateful. Hence, they called him General, and made this tomb. Chang pointed out something mystical about the stone. It said if you bowed to it 3 times, it would protect you while crossing the desert. Hearing that, the merchants all began bowing. Little did they know, Chang made that all up. Out of nowhere, a cobra sprang from the darkness, attacking them. Chang quickly caught it. As it was about to sting him, he snatched the tail. The cobra had the tail of a scorpion. It was a creature from the Banyoa kingdom, part serpent, part scorpion, and highly venomous. Being able to control these snakes, the evil Banyoa Taoist used them to rise to power. Immediately, Lian warned that there were more snakes here. Feng threw his light into the darkness, revealing them. In seconds, they were all surrounded. Feng and Yao would use their powers to create an opening. Then, everyone ran for the exit. Getting outside, Zhang collapsed. He'd been bitten. Zhao quickly wrapped his hand to prevent the venom from spreading. But sadly, he said Zhang only had 4 more hours to live. Feng would bring out a jar of medicine. It wouldn't cure Zhang, but delayed the effects of the venom for at least a day. Still, there was a cure. An herb known as the Banyoa fern. However, Chang said finding the herb would cost their lives. That was because it only grew in the ruins of the Banyoa kingdom. Wondering if this was an attack, Lian tried contacting Wen, but he couldn't access the telepathic matrix. Same with Feng and Yao. Then, he noticed a snake sneaking up on Chang. He'd quickly catch it, but in the process, he got stung. Chang wrapped his hands. He'd heat up a knife and cut open the wound, sucking out the venom. Now it's getting real gay. Once Lian's pain was gone, Chang glanced at the snake, causing it to burst into pieces. Before going back, Lian offered to find the Banyoa fern first. For that, he'd take Zhao as a guide. In order not to leave the merchants unprotected, he asked Yao to stay with them. Following Zhao, Feng still found him suspicious. Lian figured it'd be best to keep an eye on him. Soon enough, they arrived at the Banyoa kingdom. As Lian sensed someone's presence, they all hid themselves. It was the imperial preceptor. Lian advised they focus on getting the herb instead of fighting, but just then, the women sensed him. Just as one of the women was about to attack, Feng shot a huge fireball at her, bringing their attention to him. After she reflected his next attack, he'd run away, forcing them to chase him. Lian and Chang were saved. After that, they met up with Zhao. However, it turned out that Zhao had no idea where the fern grew. Chang then mentioned it was shaped like a peach with broad leaves and thin roots. The herb enjoyed shade, so it grew near tall buildings. Looking ahead, Lian noticed the tall structures in the distance. Long ago, the Banyoa king slayed 2 creatures with his hands. These were the ancestors of the scorpion-tailed snake. After the 2 creatures passed, the queen picked up a leaf of the Banyoa fern and covered them. This respectful act caused the fern to become an antidote against their fatal bites. With that in mind, Lian set out for the palace with them. Arriving there, they'd split up to cover more ground. While searching, Lian would be shocked to find Shang. Not only was the little runt here, he came along with some of the merchants as well. They'd been following Lian all this while. Chang then came along with the fern. He used it on Lian, healing his wound. And as he sat beside him, Lian smiled at Chang. Chang, looking flustered, would avoid his gaze. As the others continued grabbing more herbs, Lian wanted to join in. Chang stopped him, telling him not to pick it. Suddenly, they heard a loud scream. Searching for the voice, Lian surprisingly found a face buried in the ground. He'd been captured by Banyoa soldiers and buried here to be used as fertilizer for the fern. It had been years since he last saw a human. What was most shocking was that the last he'd seen someone here was 4 or 5 decades ago. Suspecting he was lying, Lian advised everyone to stay back. A reasonable warning, but there'd be one foolish man who ran forward, entering the buried man's trap. Lian dashed in to help, but was immediately stopped by an axe landing in front of him. Then, a giant soldier jumped down from the wall along with the other men. They were Banyoa soldiers. In seconds, the soldiers surrounded Lian and his group. Having helped capture them, the human fertilizer begged to be free, but his reward was being smashed into bits by the general. Somehow, he was still alive. Looking to the side, he saw the bones of his body that had been devoured by the plants. Even at this point, he still considered himself human and believed he returned to normal soon enough. After that, Lian and the others were taken away. According to Chang, the one who buried the man called General was the strongest warrior in the kingdom. He was called Millstone. As a frail boy, he was often bullied and couldn't hold his own. Being fed up, he started training with millstones one day. All that work paid off, and he became the most feared general of the land. He was also loyal to the Banyoa imperial preceptor. Arriving at a place known as the Sinner's Pit, Millstone walked to the edge and let out a fearsome roar. Followed by this were cheers of his fellow Banyoa soldiers. Then, he ordered them to throw the 2 people in the pit while the rest would be locked up. Furious, Zhao rushed to push Millstone into the pit. The tables were turned on him, and he was thrown off. Millstone then picked Shang as the next target. Lian stopped him, speaking to him in their language. He wasn't a Banyoa man, so Millstone demanded to know where he learned to speak like that. Lian asked to be thrown off instead, insisting that the others were just merchants and Shang was a child. The general didn't care for any of that though. Just as Lian made up his mind to jump off, Chang was already at the edge. He told Lian he'd be fine, and he'd be back. Just then, he'd jump off. Lian rushed to catch him, trying to use his sash, but it was already too late. Chang fell into the abyss, leaving Lian devastated. Lian would immediately jump down, following after Chang. As Millstone caught him, he wrapped his sash all around the general, planning to take him down as well. Just then, Lian noticed the woman who had been tied to a pole by the soldiers. Breaking free, she unleashed her powers, slashing through the Banyoa soldiers one by one. Sadly for Millstone, he wouldn't be able to help his comrades as Lian dragged him down. While falling, Lian tried using his sash to reach the surface, but it was blocked by a barrier. That's when Chang showed up, gently catching him and landing safely. However, Lian was unable to see Chang's face fully. He asked to be put down, but Chang refused, holding him even closer. Looking around, Millstone noticed all his brothers had been slaughtered. Enraged, he rushed towards Chang and Lian, ready to make them pay. While still holding on to Lian, Chang dodged all the attacks gracefully. He'd control a small dagger as well, using it to reflect Millstone. Despite all his efforts, Millstone couldn't land a hit on this guy. If I were him, I'd be embarrassed. Meanwhile, Lian warned him not to jump into pits again. He was really worried. Even though Chang's heartbeat was silent, it didn't matter to him. For him, if they hit it off well, then that was good enough. All trivial things didn't matter, and he didn't want to pry. Millstone would interrupt by continuing his attack. Lian then smacked him back with his sash. He told Chang to spare his life, since they'd need the general to show the way out. Before putting Lian down, Chang brought him to a safe spot. Then, Millstone vowed that every ghost in the kingdom would hunt the 2 of them to their graves, including that she-devil was none other than the evil Taoist. Lian explained that they weren't her allies. They actually had come to defeat her, but with his comrades slain, how could the general believe them? Lian would call for a temporary truce, since they had a common enemy. Chang spoke of how the general and his people believed that the condition of the body at death dictated their afterlife. So, he threatened Millstone, asking if he didn't want his soldiers to move on peacefully. Not wanting these men to be disrespected, Millstone sat and asked if they were really here to deal with the evil Taoist. After Lian confirmed, he mentioned that the she-devil wasn't too fond of Banyoa. The evil Taoist was of mixed descent. Her mother was a Banyoa-born woman, and her father, a good-for-nothing young-on man. Run down by the harsh life at the border, her father abandoned his wife and daughter to return to Yong'an. Heartbroken, her mother died of depression a few years later, and the poor girl was left alone in this cruel world at the age of 6. Her path to becoming the evil Taoist was set. The Banyoa culture idolized the strong and sturdy. Due to her small stature, the young girl was often bullied. One day, after a riot broke out at the border, she disappeared. After learning the wicked magic of Yong'an, she returned to the land that cast her out. Impressed, the royal palace offered her a position. The king was warned not to take her in, especially because of the scorpion-tailed snakes she possessed. They clamored for her death. The king would silence them, asking for Millstone's opinion. Naively and out of pity, he begged the king to spare her life. Then, he asked her to follow him. During a raid on some desert bandits, Millstone and his men successfully slaughtered all of them. One of them warned the general that the sandstorm was about to hit the cave, and they needed to evacuate. Just as they got to the exit, the sandstorm caught some of them. Luckily, the others were left unscathed. Millstone made up his mind to carry the bodies of the fallen back to their families. Upon returning to the cave, he'd be shocked to see that the soldiers had been tended to, thanks to the little girl. From that moment on, he placed his faith in her. He helped her rise to power, and she eventually became the imperial preceptor. During one of the great battles, Millstone received word that the preceptor had opened the gates. Because of that, the enemies flooded the city, and the Banyoa soldiers were overwhelmed. Ever since then, Millstone could never forgive her. He wanted her body hanging over the sinner's pit. Suddenly, Lian and Chang caught sight of the preceptor dropping down to the pit. Millstone had hung the preceptor over the pit several times. Lian found it excessively cruel, but the general argued it was merciful compared to what she did to his men. Hunting them down after they became undead, she tossed them into the pit one by one. Then, she sealed it with a magical formation, locking off all possible exits. Hearing his brothers cry out in anguish every day, he decided to capture traveling merchants to feed them. He was also behind the human fertilizer at the palace. His reason was that the Banyoa fern needed to be cultivated to keep the scorpion-tailed snakes away. Despite being undead, he still feared the snakes for some reason. In that case, Lian wondered why the imperial preceptor didn't use them to protect herself before she died. It also didn't make sense why she attacked people with the snakes far from the city. It was as if she were trying to lead people here, so Millstone could feed them to his soldiers. Before Lian could speak about the two women they saw, Chang shushed him. Then, the preceptor came in. Seeing all the dead bodies, Banyoa asked Millstone what happened. He told her to stop playing dumb. After all, she pushed his men into this pit, creating this hell. As she turned her attention towards Lian's direction, Chang shielded him with his body. That reminded Lian of how Chang softly carried him while falling into the pit. Gotta sprinkle in their gay romance a little. Banyoa felt it was a good thing that all the men were now dead. For her, they were finally at rest. Lian explained that their death was only accidental, and introduced himself as a heavenly official. She mentioned that heaven had ignored them before, so she thought they didn't care. Banyoa would then lift the barrier, allowing them to exit the pit. With that settled, Lian wondered who those other women in black and white were. Yao would call from the top, curious as to what was happening down there. Using his flame, he'd light up the pit. Millstone was shocked to see the pile of corpses all around. Every single one of the soldiers had been slaughtered. Lian would then glance at Chang, smiling and glad to see he was all right, despite the fight. Yao jumped into the pit. As for the caravan, he had created a barrier to protect them, and if they left, it was none of his business. Lian then introduced him to Millstone and Banyoa. At that moment, the general rushed towards her, slamming her into the wall. As he stomped on her, she begged for his forgiveness, but her useless pleas fell on deaf ears. He'd continue beating her up, swearing to hang her as many times as it took. Lian tried to calm the general down. However, Yua would knock out Millstone. Glancing over at Banyoa, Lian recognized her, and she addressed him as General Hua. It turned out that the tombstone in the cave earlier actually belonged to Lian. Around 200 years ago, he traveled to the south for personal reasons. With his compass breaking along the way, he somehow ended up in the desert. There, he found an army looking for men. That was how he got drafted, and before he knew it, he got promoted to lieutenant. Back then, he went by the alias Hua Xie. Banyoa was one of the orphans created from that war. One day, when Lian was cooking in the desert, one of the soldiers kicked his pot away, spilling all the food because he found it disgusting. Just then, Lian found Banyoa gobbling up the food from the ground. She'd eventually throw it up because his cooking was too strong for her. Is it really that gross? Hearing her stomach growl, he handed her a snack. From that moment on, she'd follow him in silence. Each time he noticed her presence, she turned to hide. Bit by bit, she began to open up, though she never told him where she was from. She only had one friend, a young On boy. Lian taught her to sing, dance, and fight a bit, but those good times couldn't last forever. It wasn't long until Lian was involved in a violent riot. Injured in a stampede of soldiers, he was forced to play dead. Sometime after that, he found himself back in Yong'an Kingdom, but was separated from Banyoa. She apologized for causing him trouble, but he told her it was alright. Besides, he chose to save her. Yao then questioned why she opened that gate and betrayed her people. Banyoa wouldn't respond. However, Lian was sure she had a reason. If it was too painful to talk about, he asked why she used the snakes to attack people. She explained that it wasn't her fault. The snakes disobeyed and escaped. Yao didn't believe a single word she said, calling her a rat. He bound her hands, and Millstone as well. Still, Chang and Lian asked him to hear out Banyoa first. Although she could still summon snakes, they wouldn't listen to her most of the time. So, Lian asked her to summon them to prove it. As the snakes showed up, they immediately attacked Lian, but Chang would defend him. Furious, Yao told Banyoa her petty tricks wouldn't work. To their surprise, she told them she hadn't even summoned the snakes. At that moment, they were surrounded by more. All of Banyoa's efforts to keep them back proved futile. Lian then noticed something was off about them. Using his powers, Chang made the snakes halt. Then, Yao finished them off with his flames. He tried to prove to Lian that Banyoa was fooling him. Before discussing that, Lian tried to use his sash to leave, but it wouldn't work. A snake suddenly dropped down from above. Yao quickly caught it and threw it at Banyoa. Seeing that it didn't attack her, it proved his suspicions were true, but they'd have a much bigger problem to deal with as a multitude of snakes rained down from above. On Lian's command, Yao used his flames to burn down the snakes. Then, he'd create a wall of fire to protect them. Once again, he asked why the snakes weren't attacking Banyoa. Chang pointed out that they didn't attack him or Lian either. Maybe the snakes just hated Yao. At this point, he was begging for a fight. Lian tried to calm him down, but Yao insisted that either Banyoa or Chang was lying. He couldn't trust them. However, Lian would remain stubborn about it. Yao couldn't understand why he was trusting them. Sensing more trouble, Chang immediately shielded Lian. Opening his umbrella, he deflected the snakes that poured down. Meanwhile, Yao was left to fend for himself. With his mana being blocked, he couldn't conjure his flames. Lian suspected there was someone else hiding. Hearing Banyoa's frightened voice, he and Chang quickly moved to save her. Running under the rain of snakes, Chang deflected a blade thrown at him. With that, he was able to detect their uninvited guest. As the battle between them ensued, Lian was still trying to make sense of the situation. On the other hand, Yao was convinced that Banyoa was like Schwanji, a traitor and a demon. Hearing that, Lian came to a realization. He then called out General Pei Shu. Despite all the deaths here, the Banyoa Pass was ignored by those in heaven. Someone had to be hiding the truth. It was when Yao mentioned Schwanji that Lian had a revelation about Generals Pei and Pei Shu. Recalling the massacre Pei Shu had been involved in, he figured there was only one place it could have taken. It couldn't have been Millstone or Banyoa. Yao didn't believe a god would have done this to cover up what happened to them. Plus, if Pei Shu came down here, someone would notice. That's when Lian pointed out that he used a different form. He had never known snakes to be here before, and their attacking the merchants for no reason didn't make sense. Also, if they found the kingdom thanks to the guide, then how did the merchants get here so quickly? Lian would recall that the human fertilizer mentioned meeting one of them about 4 or 5 decades ago. Connecting all the dots, he outed Pei Jr. as Zhao. At that moment, Yao's mana was restored, and he lit up the darkness. As Zhao was revealed, he asked Lian if he thought maybe the human fertilizer might have been talking about Chang. Lian then questioned Zhao, asking how he knew Banyoa. Turns out, he was Banyoa's friend from the past. Not only that, but he was also the one who ordered her to open the gates that day. Lian asked for an explanation, but according to Chang, that was how all heavenly officials acted. Banyoa would butt in, claiming it was all her fault. One day, after she was bullied, she fell to the ground. That was when Pei Shu came and helped her up. He promised to chase out the people of Banyoa eventually, and when he told her to fight back, she told him that the general didn't want that. After Lian was trampled on by that stampede, she lost contact with him. With only his cloak left to comfort her, Banyoa steeled her resolve. Eventually, she became the imperial preceptor. When it came time to conquer the central plain, Banyoa asked Millstone if they really had to fight. He assured that it would be over in a flash, and their kingdom would finally be at peace. Before the war was over, Banyoa met with Pei Shu, and he told her the one solution lay in her hands. That would lead to her opening the gates and the slaughter of the Banyoa soldiers. Now that the truth was out, Millstone challenged Pei Shu, claiming he wouldn't have won the war in the first place if not for Banyoa. Pei Shu reminded him of all the heinous acts, robbery, and murders his kingdom did to his people. They kept going back and forth, arguing over borders they shared. Millstone said the real reason Pei Shu needed to win that battle was that he was frowned upon as the descendant of an exile. He claimed Pei Shu had decided on Banyoa as well, but Banyoa had been working undercover for Pei Shu right from the beginning. Suddenly, a voice echoed from above, calling out Pei Shu for having a cold heart. A tornado would then strike the pit, lifting them all out. Getting to the surface, they finally met Windmaster Shi Qingchuan. She confronted Pei Shu for luring travelers to the Banyoa Pass all these years. The restless spirits here were proof of the massacre he committed. Not wanting to jeopardize his promotion, he attempted to appease their anger with sacrifices. No matter how you put it, his actions were inexcusable. Qingchuan would then apologize to Lian for the earlier sandstorm. She was trying to prevent him from entering Banyoa Kingdom. Regardless, she asked him to stay out of this matter from now on. Fearing Banyoa would be used as a scapegoat, He refused to step aside, but the Windmaster assured him that she wouldn't be held as a culprit. They already knew who was the guilty one. With that settled, Qing Xuan returned to heaven with Pei Shu and Millstone. During the war, after seeing Banyue's pitiful condition, Pei Shu joined the army. Sadly, he wouldn't get assigned a position due to his status. The only way he could prove himself was through hard work on the battlefield. Despite being one of the best fighters, he still didn't get promoted. A random deputy lieutenant was assigned because his father worked for the government. While he was sulking, Banyue, along with her scorpion-tailed snakes, approached him. Thanks to his tactics, he gained the favor of his comrades. Jealous of his feats, the deputy lieutenant put him in a tough spot, looking for a way to bring him down. When the war began and Pei Shu's troops broke in, he heard people screaming that they had captured the preceptor. Rushing to the scene, he was stunned by what he saw. Banyue had been tied to a pole for all to see, as she was the traitor. Back to Lien, he wondered where to go from here. Fang told him to report the crimes to the emperor and be done with the matter. Thanks to his actions, Pei Shu would most likely be demoted, and General Pei Ming would have no one to blame but Lien. However, Chang claimed the general was too proud to seek revenge, so he'd be fine. As Lien went to check on Banyue, Chang advised him to transport her using the magic pot. After they went back to the merchants, using the fern, Zhang was healed. Shang had figured out Lien was a god, but promised to keep it a secret. He also vowed to build a big temple dedicated to him when he grew up, so people could give Lien offerings. As the merchants left, Lien feared General Pei would target the Windmaster for reporting what happened here, but Fang guaranteed Qing Xuan would be fine. Chang also mentioned that she had connections. The woman she was traveling with was one of the 5 elemental masters as well. So, Chang advised Lien to stay on her good side. As a token of his gratitude, Lien offered to cook dinner for everyone. Hearing that, Fang suddenly grew fearful. He quickly made an excuse and took his leave. Lien's cooking had probably scarred him for life. Turning to Chang, Lien asked if he'd like dinner, referring to him by his actual name. Chang slowly leaned in closer to his face, asking that he stick to San Ling. Alright, well, when someone recommended this to me, I knew this was going to be Dynasty Chinese femboys, but I don't feel like anything important happened in this story at all. This is like gacha game level storytelling. All flash, no substance. Subscribe if you want me to pick up season 2, maybe it'll get better. But if not, watch this next video. It's me, Comfy T. I'll see you all in the next one.